the show. This show is all about you. Not you, but you and your stories. Because everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Brought to you by JeffSeltzer.com.
Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. As always, I'm your host, Jeff Seltzer, and this is week 50 of my personal midlife crisis. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey as we end up wherever we end up. I guess that's how it goes. First of all, I want to thank everybody for all the great feedback of last week's episode. Last week was celebrating the 1-year anniversary of this podcast. As mentioned last week, Daniel was the host and I was the guest, which was a nice little switch. I'm used to being in the host seat. So I was in the figurative guest seat, which was a little different for me, but I did really enjoy it a lot. What I will say is I enjoyed it so much that if anybody out there is hosting a podcast and wants a guest, I'd love to come on, have a conversation, share my stories or whatever you want. So if any podcast hosts are out there looking for guests, hit me up. Where can you hit me up? So as always on social medias, you can find us on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. You can find the show on TikTok at Everybody Has a Story Pod. For all things Jeff Seltzer, you can always check us out at JeffSeltzer.com. You can email the show directly at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. Additionally, as mentioned last week, we do now have a secondary website where if you want to check it out, everybodyhasastorypod.com. Probably every week or so, we'll switch up where it's pointing, probably like video of the week or clip of the week or something. Not really sure fully what we'll do with it yet, but we'll have some fun with it. And so stick around and let's see how it goes. I did want to briefly talk about something I've thought about for weeks, actually months at this point, in terms of haven't really had the opportunity to speak on it, but it's something that I think is interesting. So it's about money. So not capitalism or the wealth gaps or demographic gaps, whatever else like that, or how, eat the rich or whatever. More about like money, like cash versus credit cards, like literal money. So thinking about it before COVID, so let's say up until 2019, most places, at least here in America, it's the same price, cash or credit, right? So you'd go to a restaurant, you'd go to, sporting events, you can use cash, you can use credit. It's the same. It doesn't really matter. Only real exception was probably gas stations where they always had like a cash discount. But gas stations have always charged like at 9/10 of a penny, which is super weird. So I'm going to kind of leave them out of this conversation. So let's fast forward a little bit, go to 2020. And then all of a sudden now, obviously the world changes different ways. Obviously, it was what it was. And now cash and credit doesn't seem to have the same thing. So it's a very confusing world. So going out of COVID, first of all, you've got arenas and some stadiums that no longer will take cash, right? So you've got places where cash no longer has value. You have to kind of trade it in for a gift card and you can only use credit card. On the flip side, now we've got lots of places, pizza places and bagel shops, at least near where I live, where they charge like a 3% surcharge if you pay by credit card, which is super weird, right? So for, decades and decades, they basically all looked at it and said, hey, cash and credit cards are the same. And now they're looking at it and saying, hey, because we're charged a 3% fee, we're going to charge you a 3% fee, which is really weird. And for me, I always find it kind of awkward, especially when I go to buy something, because I'm not a cash guy. I generally pay by credit card. And so sometimes it does change the way that I shop or change the place that I go to, because I'm like, I don't really feel like paying 3% more. Okay, so hold that for a second. To add to the confusion, I have a Chase credit card, Chase United credit card. It's awesome. I'm not trying to sponsor or advertise it, just kind of talking about the fact that that's what I mostly use. Now, a lot of credit cards now have like instant rebates. So if you log into your Chase credit card account, for example, it has like 100 different things that if you click on it, like if you shop or, buy things at certain places, you'll get a discount credit on your statement. Now, weirdly, some of those are as much as 5% at places that charge a 3% surcharge for the credit card. So for example, there's a bagel shop near where I live. They charge you an extra 3% if you use your credit card. But then the Chase credit card gives me 5% back. Like, this is super confusing. And as a society, I'm not even really sure where we're going with this. Like, this is really odd. Like, I assume that if there's a specific credit for a specific restaurant, that they probably have some kind of relationship or agreement with the credit card company. So why add the confusion? Like, at the end of the day, just give me a 2% discount. Or, just forget it all. Don't add a surcharge and don't give me a credit. I don't understand. Then there's other places that I go to that they charge a 2%, or 3% credit card fee. But then give extra United miles through my Chase United credit card. Like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't have to be this complicated. Money is money. Let's just make the most of it. And let's just simplify it if we can. I'll follow up in a year from now and see if it's changed or if it's even worse than it is today. But who knows? At the end of the day, it's not going to change the way that I do things too much because I'm a man of routine. But at the same time, I do really not like having to pay extra to use credit card. Maybe I start using my Fidelity credit card, which gives me a 2% cash return on everything I buy. We'll have to see. Anyway, with that said, I do want to introduce my guest for this week. She is not He-Man's sister, but she knows a few things about Hercules. Please welcome my friend Shera.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Shera, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. So for those of you that don't know, I've been friends and coworkers with Shera for about a year or so at this point. She does live up in Canada, as you can probably see based on the title of this episode. Do you want to give a little 30 or 45 seconds on who is Shera?
Sure. So my name is Shera. I'm born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Jeff and I have worked together for about a year, but I've been in our company for almost 13. So it's been my whole adult life. Prior to that, I did go to school for forensic science and analytical chemistry. So that's my background. I have a 5-year-old son who keeps me very busy, very active. And I like doing all the normal things, reading, going out for lunch with friends, dinner with friends, hanging out, traveling, all that good stuff.
Very cool. So first of all, thank you for joining us, Shera. Really appreciate your time and obviously coming on. What I will say is, so you are, I believe, the first international guest that I've had. So it's very exciting, I know. So I had Lithia on twice. Her first time, she was talking about immigrating to the United States. So while she is technically from South America, she was sitting in New Jersey when we had the conversation.
Right.
I've had guests from all over this country, but you're the first one that's been north of the border. So for me, this is exciting.
Okay, good.
As an opportunity to maybe expand my my penetration, as they would say, in the market in terms of like consumer based people listening. As I will say, statistically, 95% of my streams are from the United States. To dig a little deeper, about 0.9% are from Canada. I have an inkling that a few of those might be you, but I'm not sure. I am going to Toronto, Ontario, Canada, not too far from where you are, in the coming future. So we'll see if I can get my percentage streams up a little bit more in Canada. Maybe I'll give out some business cards. Maybe I'll take 17 devices and play them on my podcast for a little while to kind of get credit for the stream. We'll see how it goes. But with that said, I mean, it is exciting and interesting, as I do want to learn and help my audience learn a bit more about Canada, right? So
yeah,
you grew up in Canada, you grew up in Ontario, correct?
Yep, correct.
Cool.
Yeah, I grew up in Toronto, which is the capital of Ontario, but it's not the capital of Canada.
Is that Ottawa?
It is. Ottawa is the capital of Canada. Yep.
Yes, I actually went to an Ottawa Senators hockey game probably over a decade ago, and it was middle of December or January. It wasn't the good time to visit Ottawa, I would say. I would not recommend.
Worst time.
Yeah, it was very smart on our part. I think we did Montreal and Ottawa, which, again, doing a January Quebec and Ottawa trip was probably not the way to go. But
okay.
life is full of lessons I didn't know you at the time, so we move forward at this point. So with that said, so growing up in Toronto or the Toronto area, were you aware at the time that you lived in Canada and Canada was different than the United States, and obviously it's kind of like that there are differences, I guess, culturally or people wise or whatever, or did you kind of it's like for me, I'll say, like, growing up in New Jersey, like, obviously your universe is you, right, in terms of what's around you. And I don't think I went to Canada until I was probably a teenager for the first time. Going to Canada for the first time, not being a teenager for the first time.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily have any awareness of the metric system or how things were different, or even how in Eastern Canada they speak French. Like, growing up, were you aware that Canada might be different than the US, or kind of like, hey, this is Canada and I like life?
It was more like, this is Canada and I like life. Obviously, in our education, we had social studies where we learned about the history of Canada, the participation we had in certain wars as Canadians and things like that. But I'd say my awareness of the U.S. went as far as going to Disneyland or Disney World as a 5-year-old and being in a different country and knowing other big cities that I would see in movies were in the U.S., but I had no frame of reference to how different our countries were until I got a lot older.
Gotcha. So growing up also, and I think you probably grew up, let's say, a decade or so after I did, just keeping the math kind of light and soft here. How about like American landmarks, like the Statue of Liberty or New York City or Golden Gate Bridge? Are these things that you were aware of or were taught about in school or saw in media, or what was your awareness of that?
Not taught about, but definitely aware of. I mean, all major movies that we would watch as kids would take place either in LA or New York, basically, Chicago. And so I would learn through movies and TV, basically, about certain things about the US. Music, obviously, lots of celebrities exist in the US. So that would be my inroads, I guess, to America. It wasn't really until probably 9/11, to be honest,
Sure.
where we became, I was in high school at that time. And that's where, for me, that was an impactful event, obviously, as it was on the world, and made me much more aware of our differences in Canada and US. The other thing is, like, through history lessons and things in school, we learned about certain things we participated in, certain things we didn't participate in. Yep. For example, I have little to no knowledge of the Vietnam War.
Okay.
And I read a book called The Women by Kristen Hanna, which I absolutely loved. And it was historical fiction about a woman who went overseas in the Vietnam War. And that's the most I've ever learned about that war, because we didn't learn about it growing up in school.
Gotcha. So without getting into the political aspect of it, growing up, did you ever see the movie Good Morning Vietnam? And did that mean anything to you? Or like
all I would ever see was the clip of Robin Williams.
Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Nice. So you grew up obviously in Canada. You were in high school during 9/11. That was obviously a very impactful, and it seems like to you, it changed kind of your worldview a little bit, and you kind of picked up things from there. Then I assume you graduated high school. You said you went to college. Where did you go to school? Was it local? Did you go away? Or like, I assume you stayed in Canada, but like, where did you go for that? So
I stayed in Canada. My university. So in Canada, we have what we call universities. You guys call colleges and universities. And then our college is more like a community college, I would say. So I went to university, 4-year program at Trent University, which is in Peterborough, Ontario, which is about an hour and a half drive from Toronto. And one difference between Canadians and some Americans is we talk distance in time versus miles. I have no clue how many kilometers it is. Maybe like 130 kilometers. I don't know. It's an hour and a half drive to Peterborough.
So to that point, let me ask you this then, because the reason why we have to talk miles here is because traffic can be so ridiculous. Like, as an example, tomorrow I'm going to Long Island, New York, which may or may not mean anything to you geographically, but like on a Sunday morning could take 55 minutes or an hour. During rush hour or normal times could take 2.5 to 3 hours. So for me, as I am habitually early for everything, if you just said, hey, it takes that much time to get somewhere or whatever, like I would start buffering to the buffer, and I would be everywhere like 3 days early. So for me, and again, it's just kind of the way that I'm wired, I guess. Like I kind of need miles. Then obviously now with technology, I can go with the GPS and kind of like map it out to see, okay, if I do it now versus at 3 a.m. versus 7 at night, like what's it going to look like? But like, I guess, does that kind of give us a little bit of a tease into the fact that there isn't that much, or the traffic just doesn't really vary that much up there?
Oh, it's terrible in Toronto. Terrible.
So then how does that work then? Like if you say it's an hour drive, like it could be 45 minutes, it could be 3 hours. You give
an estimate. Like if I say I'm going to work in Mississauga, which is a 23-kilometer drive from my house, I looked this up.
Okay.
In the morning, it's 35 minutes. In the evening, it's an hour and 10 minutes home.
Oh.
So depending on time of day. And there is a joke that it takes an hour to go from Toronto to Toronto. Because of how awful our traffic is. So, I mean, Google Maps is a very big help. I'm a time buffer person too. So but it's interesting because still, like, if I say and this is very Canadian to me, the closest Tim Hortons is 6 minutes away. I wouldn't say it's 5 kilometers or 3 miles away.
Makes sense. And I'll say, I mean, that Toronto's comment really hit home. As I think it was about 11 years ago, I was on a work trip. And me and some coworkers were in Atlanta. We were on the plane. It took off. I think about a half hour into the flight, they realized there was an issue with the wheel. So then eventually it landed back in Atlanta. So we basically, the running joke was, we took a 1-hour flight from Atlanta to Atlanta. And what was great was, like, and I took a screenshot also, like in the United app, like it showed like take off in Atlanta at 7:45, landed in Atlanta at 8:45, which for me just like cracks me up years later. Because like out of context, you're like, what were we doing sightseeing around Atlanta at 8 o'clock at night? That's just stupid. That's just dumb. But like for me, like it hits home. Like, yeah, it happens and I get it. But to your point, I mean, New York City, right? Like New York City, again, not necessarily that you would know as much, but like it's not very big. Like it's a couple of miles around, I think, or something. Mm-hmm. But like with the amount of traffic there, like I've driven and I hate driving around New York City because legitimately you're stopping at every corner. It's very congested and it's not fun. So I guess that's inner city life, right?
That's just what it is, living in the city. And I'm very used to it. Like I will Uber or drive or take transit depending on my patience and tolerance that day. And if I want to sit and read on the bus to the subway, or if I want to drive and then take just as long trying to find parking as I did driving to my destination. So it really depends on the day. But
And
I
to
think
that
that's
point,
just living in the city.
oh, absolutely. And to that point, I assume at least Ontario has Ubers and Lyfts and everything similar
Oh
to
yeah,
the States here.
We are just as technologically advanced here as you guys in the South.
Was not a judgment on technology. Just wondering, like, what is where? Like, if you guys have flying cars, like in Back to the Future or anything like that yet,
No, we do have some homegrown apps. Wait,
Okay.
do you guys have Skip the Dishes and DoorDash and Uber Eats?
So we have 2 and 3. Skip the Dishes, I've never heard of before, but I'm intrigued. I mean, I think it's a great name because I think it's very literal to what we're trying to get at when we want to get delivery. Is it basically another DoorDash or Uber Eats?
It's another, so
Skip
that must
the
be
Dishes.
a homegrown one. Skip the Dishes, yeah. So I alternate between the 3 when I want to do it.
That's fun. So shout out to Skip the Dishes. Maybe you guys make it down south at some point, or the IPO, or probably Uber Eats or DoorDash just buys them at some point.
Probably,
Who knows? So getting back to university for a second. So I'll say my one experience with universities in Canada, and this is like a weird story, I guess. So I think it was sophomore year of college. Me and some friends or some people that lived on my floor, we went to Montreal for spring break.
Okay.
Which again in March or April feels very silly because it was snowy, it was cold, and that kind of gets into my story as well. Because I think somebody on my floor had a friend who went to McGill University.
Yes.
So being poor college students, we're like, okay, we can drive like 8, 9, 10 hours or whatever, but then have a place to crash because we just crashed on somebody's like floor in the dorm. I do remember we went up there. It was super crowded. In the dorm because it was like a dorm for like 2 people and there's probably about like 9 of us there. And eventually I just couldn't sleep. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go sleep in the car, which, in March is not the smartest thing to do in Montreal. So I went outside. I sat in the car. I think I slept for about a half hour, but I was freezing because like you're not turning the car on. It's just kind of a bit of a mess. Eventually I went back inside and they're like, what happened? Like, you look freezing. I'm like, this is a true story. And ridiculously, everybody believed it. I said, yeah, I was asleep and everything was fine. But then one of the Mounties came over and knocked on the window. He was on a horse, I think. And he said, I'm sorry, sir, you cannot be doing this. And so I said, I apologize. I'll go back inside. Because I guess they didn't, per my story, they didn't want like the homeless or people just sitting out in the street. And ridiculously, I guess I did it so, I don't know, so straightforward or whatever.
Yeah.
Everybody believes it. Like the fact that in March you'd have, I guess, are Mounties really a thing? My only reference to a Mountie is there was a professional wrestler in the 90s who was supposed to be super Canadian who called himself the Mountie and had like a taser, had like a red outfit and whatever else like that. But like I didn't know what I was talking about. But I guess I said enough about it that they believed me, which I thought was pretty funny.
That is a funny story. So Mounties will not be traipsing around Montreal on horseback. I'll say that. So the Royal Canadian Mounted Police does exist. They are our national police.
Okay.
They service regions and areas and I guess more like counties that don't have their own provincial or municipal police. So for example, we have Toronto Police, then neighboring us is Peel Police, York Region Police, Durham Police. So all of the big municipalities have their own police service. Then we have the Ontario Provincial Police, and they are responsible for most of Ontario. But in other parts of Canada that don't have either the population density or as heavy a presence of the provincial provincial police, the Mounties or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police will be the responding officers. And actually in university, so I did my undergrad at Trent in forensic science, and then I did my master's in forensic chemistry in partnership with the lead chemist at the RCMP. So
gotcha. And for the record, I assume the Mounties are not on horses, especially in March.
So they do like, more for pomp and circumstance. They'll put on their Mountie reds with the brown cap and ride their horses in parades or when, important politicians are around, things like that. But
of course,
day to day, they're regular cops.
Got it. Which I guess is similar to what we have here in the States because we have like local cops. So I live in Rockaway Township. We have the Rockaway Township Police, but then we also have the state police.
Right.
So basically here, the state police are generally more like on highways and kind of like interstate roads and such versus local, like, if someone breaks into my house, the state police aren't going to show up. Like I would have to call my local municipality and a cop would show up or something like that.
Right.
So it sounds like it's a similar system, just different names, different verbiage for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Okay. So you graduate university, and obviously you're living your Canadian life. So I know you had said you don't necessarily talk in kilometers, you talk in like time, which again, time is the same no matter what. But throughout any of this, like I'll say myself, like Fahrenheit versus Celsius, meters versus feet. Like, I really wish the whole world would just kind of like find like one thing. And like, as an American, like most Americans are like, no, we're American. We should be what it is. Everyone should drop the metric system. The metric system makes so much sense. Like everything in the metric system is based off of math and like, kind of like meters and kilometers or whatever else like that. Exactly. It's by tens and hundreds and stuff like that. Versus for us, it doesn't make any sense. Were you taught both metric and I guess, quote, the standard system, which is a dumb name for it because it's standard in America is pretty much it. Like, were you taught both in school or just the one?
No, we were only taught metric. The only reason I know, I'd say mile to kilometer conversion is the time in my life that I wanted to do maybe 5K races or 3.1 mile races. Yeah. But in school, we never learned we call it the imperial system. I don't know what you guys call it. And interestingly enough, though, we still talk about weight in pounds. So if someone were to ask me my weight, I would respond in pounds. I wouldn't respond in kilos.
Okay. And
if someone were to ask me my height, I'd say feet and inches, not centimeters. But distance is metric. I mean, everything at the grocery store is in kilos. So if I go and it's like, actually, no, interesting. I got cherries this morning and they were on sale for $2.98 a pound.
Interesting.
And then underneath it says what that conversion would be in kilograms. So it's kind of a mixed bag, like in the world, out in the wild, but in school, we only learn the metric system.
I wonder if they're like sourced from America or there's something behind the scenes of an American company in terms of what drives that. Because it feels weird that they would go both ways. I mean, here, we have liter bottles of soda, which I think is that's liters are metric, right? Liters are metric, yeah. Yeah, I think that might be the only metric that I'm really familiar with here because everything else, we basically stick with what we have. So football must be really confusing then to you guys if football's in yards, but football's not nearly as big, or the CFL isn't really as big as it is here, I guess, right?
Well, the CFL is not nearly as big, and the CFL is big in markets that don't have other major sports teams. So in Toronto, we have the Jays, the Leafs, the Raptors, and then we have the CFL team, the Argonauts, which do have a following, but they're not as big as, let's say, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who have no other major sports team.
Right.
American football obviously has fans in Canada, and I understand the rules of American football, but I can't tell you, I can't visualize how long a yard is.
Right.
Like in my mind, if you ask me how far is it from here to there, I'd say what I perceive it to be in meters. I would have no clue what that would equate to in yards. What is a yard? Is it 3 feet to a yard?
So a yard is 3 feet. So 36 inches is a yard. So I think a meter is like 39 inches.
A meter is 100 centimeters, and there's 2.5 centimeters an inch. So do that math.
Okay, so I'm going to go by what I don't have the mental capacity right now to do that math live on the air. Yeah. But I'm going to say I think of what I heard was like 39 inches or so. So a yard is just short of a meter. I think is probably the easiest way to do it.
Well, and it's like 4 liters is just short of a gallon. So I don't understand why the imperial system came to be, but it makes no sense to the rest of the world, is what I'll say as a Canadian. Yeah. Are you Googling it?
I'm Googling it right now. I figure why not, right? What the heck, right? Let's convert meters to inches. So yeah, it is 39.37 inches per meter. So I was pretty close. I rounded, let's say. So let's call it 39 inches per meter. Okay. So it's just over. So if a yard is 36 inches, you're talking a little bit more than a yard is a meter.
Okay, is a meter. Okay.
Yeah. So next time that you watch Canadian football or American football or whatever, add that context, think about this conversation, and I guess we are good to go. I don't know.
Exactly.
Very good. So I mean, sports are probably a little bit different. I know. I mean, hockey is huge up by you guys. A lot of massive, right? For me, growing up, I grew up a baseball fan, but at this point, not really that into baseball. But I've always been a hockey fan. Grew up a Rangers fan. Went to college, stopped following hockey, then eventually became a Devils fan. Is it weird that hockey is as big as it is in Canada, yet you guys can't win a cup?
Hey.
I know. It's probably all the American imports that are up there, right?
I'm that quintessential Leafs fan who, this year's going to be the year. It's going to be the year. And then it's not. But what I'd say is the Canadian love of hockey transcends our 6 teams across the country. So it is like such a Canadian sport, and everybody in Canada will have some hockey team that they cheer for. And the prairie provinces are kind of divided because Saskatchewan doesn't have its own team. So maybe they'll like Calgary or an Edmonton or a Winnipeg, and the Maritimes has no team. They typically like the Canadians. I don't understand why. So what I'd say is it's kind of like ingrained in you from childhood that you need to know how to skate. So I learned to skate when I was probably 3 years old, and I grew up figure skating.
Nice.
There are, people who will play shinny hockey. Lots of friends growing up had ice rinks that their parents would put in their
I'm sorry, what was that
backyard.
first word? Shimmy hockey?
Shinny.
What is shinny hockey?
Oh, like pickup. We call it shinny. Yeah.
Gotcha. Like here
Wow.
we call it
See, little Canadian things you don't even know.
I mean, I'm trying to learn, right? This is what I try to do here. Like
Yeah.
here we have like pickup basketball or like whatever else like that. So shinny, I assume is a Canadian. I'm gonna say it's not slang probably or not a curse, but it's just local pickup hockey for the most part, right?
Yeah. So if you want to go play shinny, it's like whoever can play, come play and pick up hockey, I guess.
Very
But we
cool.
will call it pickup basketball.
Okay.
Yes. You don't say shinny basketball.
Shinny
so
basketball.
Shinny specific for hockey.
Hey guys, we'll play some shinny tennis or something, right?
Yeah. So, and I'd say, yeah, it is. The obsession with hockey has changed over time from, I guess, where I sit. And I live in a major city, and we have the Raptors who, won the championship in 2019.
Right.
The Jays who have made some pretty good runs for it in the last, over the last 5-10 years. Maybe this year will be another good attempt. So
maybe looking good.
And, Toronto also has a massive multicultural and immigrant population. So I would say the quintessential Canadianness of things has maybe shifted, at least in Toronto. But hockey is still our sport, even though lacrosse is technically our national sport.
Interesting. Because like growing up, so I think we had lacrosse in New Jersey, but I think early on, like when I was growing up, lacrosse wasn't that big nationally. I think it got, I'm going to say big, but not really big, but bigger as I was growing up. It still hasn't really, carried on as like a national pastime in the U.S. Because there's no sports league, right? It was only like in the mid 90s that we finally got a true soccer league in America, which was very weird because it's the world's pastime or world sport, I guess.
Yeah.
And even hockey, I'll say it was weird, when hockey became big in like Florida and California, like, historically, eventually it was largely in the North, Canada, Michigan, New York, stuff like that. Then eventually they added, the Ducks in California. They added a couple of expansion teams in Florida. So it's interesting, especially since they don't necessarily, you don't think, hey, I'm going to go ice skating in Florida or California. But I guess they've created the infrastructure so that way people can train, people get an interest, and it kind of goes from there, which is good. So
yeah, and I'd say lacrosse, for example, to me, it wasn't even on my radar growing up. I think it's probably in areas outside of big metropolises, but we have a Toronto lacrosse team called Toronto Rock, and they play in some kind of league. So, but it's interesting how the national sport isn't as popular as the regular other sports, major sports.
So from looking at hey, I'm a Canadian and I like to watch sports, it's probably, I would imagine, you've got hockey's probably at the top, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've probably got, I assume, baseball, since they have the Blue Jays, which is a fairly sizable team. Only one team since you guys lost the Expos, unfortunately. Yeah. But you have a big team. I mean, Rogers Center, huge stadium, that stuff like that. And then you've got, I would say, the CFL, Canadian Football League, probably below that. And then maybe lacrosse below that. Is that fair?
Well, and the Raptors somewhere in the middle there, depending on
that's true. Depending on how they do, probably as well. But yeah, I mean, the Raptors sell out, especially when they're doing well. So I guess that would make sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. Okay, so targeting back to Toronto, as we had said, we have sports teams, stuff like that, and selfishly, I know we've talked about it before. My wife and I are going to Toronto this week. We have some huge plans. Again, thanks, Shera, for helping us out with some planning details. So, for you, are you personally a sports fan? Or are people in your family sports fans? How would you kind of rate your fandom? Let's say.
I'm a really big sports fan. I grew up in a hockey house and a Blue Jays house between my dad and my mom. And I love watching sports. I like going and playing pickup sports, things like that. So I'd say, it's pretty ingrained in what I do. I have a son who loves soccer and basketball, so play with him. Not very good at soccer, but I try. And so I'm a big fan, and I love going to the games. It's hard. It's very hard to get Toronto Maple Leaf tickets, and they're really expensive. But if you can get your hands on a pair, it's fun to go watch them. Jays, they play, I don't know, 85 games a year at home or something, and you can get tickets for as cheap as $20. So that's more of a, you got nothing to do, let's go to the Jays game on a Saturday afternoon. But I just like being in that atmosphere. It's fun. It's I don't know. It's nice to be surrounded by a bunch of people that are all there for the same thing, similar to concerts. I love those environments where everyone's there focused on one thing and the crowd gets going. So I like it.
So I guess at that point also, actually, good call out there on concerts. So living in New Jersey, I'm very spoiled in terms of like just events, right? So I have New
Hmm.
York, I have New Jersey, and I have Philly. So basically, anybody who goes on tour is going to be within, let's say, an hour and a half of where I live. So just kind of recapping it briefly. So over the last couple of months and upcoming months, who did I see? I saw Halsey, I saw Weird Al Yankovic, I'm seeing Linkin Park, I'm seeing the Jonas Brothers, I'm seeing Benson Boone, and I'm seeing Sabrina Carpenter. Uh, they're all just within like a stone's throw of where I live. Do
Yeah.
you get like big acts up there? Do you guys love your Justin Bieber and Carly Rae Jepsen? Kind of like what is Canadian like music or Bare Naked Ladies like? What is or Rush? I guess Rush is one of the best of all time. It
Rushes.
doesn't
Yeah.
really get its due down here, but Tom Sawyer is pretty solid. What do you like? What does the musical scene look like for you guys up there?
So we do get a lot of the major names that come through Toronto. So we're very like Coldplay just did 4 shows here over the last week and a half.
They also played in Boston recently. I heard might have made some news. I'm not sure.
I can't believe how quickly the internet just it's shocking the amount of content on
So,
that.
on a side note, and this is something I read, and I think I agree. The problem without getting into obviously the issues with cheating and whatever else like that, which is another conversation altogether. The challenge might have been the fact that it happened in the quietest sports week of the year. So what happens is the United States, there's like 2 or 3 days a year that there are no sporting events. So the Major League Baseball All-Star game was Tuesday. The ESPYs were Wednesday. So there's no, obviously it's out of season for basketball and for hockey. The WNBA, they took a break also because of the ESPYs. Baseball took a break for the All-Star game. There's no football. I think soccer didn't have any games or whatever. So legitimately there was no sports news for that week or for those few days. So there was that much more of a news cycle for it to pick up. So it's very unfortunate. I mean, for many reasons that it happened. Yeah. But I think that's part of the reason why it did. Plus, obviously, it's just one of those like dopey things that like the way that they reacted, it just basically like yelled out like, "Hey, something weird is going on here."
Right. I saw one meme or whatever that was said that basically the internet has never felt more united.
Right, left and right, politically, everybody's on the same page. Like,
yeah, exactly. So back to concerts. So we get massive names that come through Toronto. Drake is from Toronto, so he's an international megastar.
Of course.
We also have a very awesome, in my opinion, Canadian music scene. So there are the artists that have made it internationally, like Bryan Adams, Bieber, Drake. But then we have like one of my favorite bands of all time is this band called the Arkells.
Okay.
And they travel a little bit over to the UK. I'm sure they do some shows in the States, but they're amazing. And I love them. And they put on an amazing show. And also one of my other favorite artists of all time is City and Colour. And he's from St. Catharines, Ontario, which is outside Niagara Falls. Massive following in Canada, big following in the UK. I know he's played in the States, but like he's not a name that many people would know. And there are I could send you lists of Canadian artists that I grew up listening to that never really made it outside of Canada, but we do have a pretty epic music scene here in Toronto, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say even outside of the small ones that never made it, I mean, just looking at a list now and I'm remembering now, I mean, Shawn Mendes is from Canada, which I didn't necessarily realize. Nickelback, a band that I've seen and I get a lot of hate for. I've seen them like 4 or 5 times. Love them. Avril Lavigne, obviously Canadian, really awesome. Even Joni Mitchell. So, I mean, there's definitely a deep and far back music scene in Canada.
Neil Young.
Neil Young is from Canada, again, obviously. Who else do we have on our list here that maybe
Tragically Hip? Is Tragically Hip a well-known band outside of Canada?
I've heard of them. Actually, they're on my list here. I've heard of them. I'm not sure that I could pick out a song. Alanis Morissette, obviously. I forgot that she's from Canada. You got Shania Twain, the Guess Who, Sarah McLachlan, Nelly Furtado. I mean, you could have a whole, music weekend or celebration around just Canadian.
We have the Juno Awards every year, which is our Canadian Grammys.
That's true. That's Psalm 41. As I mentioned earlier, one of my favorites, Carly Rae Jepsen. So definitely a lot of great music north of the border, which is awesome.
Yeah. So I was spoiled growing up, getting to go to a ton of concerts. Even now, as an adult, we have a beautiful venue called Budweiser Stage, which is an American brand. Funny, but Budweiser Stage, where it's this awesome outdoor venue. Dave Matthews was just here playing there last week. My parents saw James Taylor played it a couple weeks ago. So
Nice. I guess Budweiser probably outbid Molson or whatever local insert your name beer here, right?
Yeah, it used to be called the Molson Amphitheater, and now it's the Budweiser stage.
Oh, I see. We're trying to take over Canada one thing at a time.
One venue at a time.
One venue at a time. We'll get there. So speaking of drinking, so in the United States, so I'm not a big drinker. Like I don't drink a lot. I'll drink socially, whatever. But when I go out, I'll often drink a Jack and Coke, which is Jack Daniels and Coca-Cola, for those of you that aren't aware. If I were to go into Canada and order myself a similar drink, a whiskey and a cola of some kind, like what would you call it? Would you call it a Crown and Coke? Would you call it a Crown Royal and Coke? Like what would be the official name there?
Crown and Coke or Rye and Ginger is the other one. Rye and Ginger would be Crown and Ginger Ale.
Crown and Ginger Ale. I'm taking
like
notes here.
Rye and Ginger would be the name.
Got it. What would Shera's drink of choice be if she went to a bar?
Depends on the day.
Okay.
If I want something casual, I like Moscow Mule or an Amaretto Sour.
Okay. Also same in America. So here you call it the same thing, which is easy.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's the same. And like we have a wine, area in Niagara Falls, wine coming out of the Okanagan Valley in the West. So in BC, but when you go into our liquor store, so here's an interesting thing about Ontario is you can only buy liquor at the liquor store. You can buy beer, wine, and like mixed canned drinks now at gas and convenience stores and grocery stores. And that was new within the last few years under Doug Ford, who's our premier. Okay. But if you want hard liquor, you have to go to an LCBO, which is the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. And so we have our Canadian section, but then international section. So, I mean, you can basically get everything, although you still can't get American drinks right now at the LCBO.
minor detail at this point. Right.
Right. But I'd say we do have a very big microbrewery culture that's kind of popped up across Toronto and across Canada. So lots of local, interesting breweries and beers and sours and IPAs and all kinds of good stuff. So that's, I mean, if I am feeling like something different, I'll pick something off of that side of the menu.
Interesting. So let me ask you this, because at least in Jersey, I can't speak for all of this country, we have restaurants that are BYOB. So basically we have like a permitting situation where if you're a restaurant, you have to get a liquor permit if you want to sell, or they can't, I guess, technically or legally sell it, but consumers can bring their own stuff in. Is that a situation by you guys where like only certain places offer it, but you can bring your own, or is it kind of like a free for all where anybody or any store or any restaurant can sell like alcohol?
I don't think we're BYOB anywhere. I've never been to a restaurant that's BYOB except for in New Jersey when I've been there for work.
Yes.
But the majority of restaurants will have a liquor license and can sell you. So some places will only have beer and wine available. Most places will have full service bar available.
Nice.
But
awesome.
Fast food places and like quick counters and stuff will not have anything other than pop or waters and that kind of stuff.
Got it. And to be fair, anybody in Jersey, when she says pop, she's referring to soda.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I always get, I think it's funny. Like when I was in Florida a few weeks ago, somebody was like, "Oh, I love your tennis shoes." And I'm like, "Tennis shoes?" Because they refer to sneakers as tennis shoes down there.
And we say running shoes.
Running shoes. You see, I mean, we have different sports of choice, I guess. I'm sure. I mean, I guess I was going to say, maybe it would be something about skating, but that would be really confusing if we tried to refer to my sneakers as like skating shoes or whatever it's called. I don't know. And I think Allison, my 15-year-old who I was in Florida with, was super kind of caught off guard. Like, why did you call them tennis shoes? And I'm like, I don't know. Different regionalities call things differently. You just smile and kind of go with it. But the point was the lady who was at the bus stop really liked my sneakers. I guess is probably the moral of that story there. So
nice.
That's it. With that said, Shera, this has been awesome. Anything that you'd like to support, promote, anything else you'd like to say before we call it a week?
No, thanks though. I'm not I don't have multiple channels on social and things like that, but I just appreciate you having me on and having this chat.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on and hopefully I can monetize all these different socials I have at some point. For right now, it's a hobby. Maybe I can retire on it. Maybe I can sell it to somebody at some point. Who knows, but we'll see how it goes. So with that said, thank you all for listening. As always, real quick note. So I know this was kind of a drop-in or a surprise podcast because I didn't mention this going forward. So last week was the 1-year anniversary. This was a conversation with the amazing Shera. Next week will be probably a conversation with Robert and Tyler. I talked about it a few weeks ago, alluded to it. What I will say is stick with it. It gets really good about 25 minutes in. Now, I know it doesn't necessarily make you feel good about listening to something for 25 minutes because maybe like a good almost a half hour into it. But it was a fun conversation. But I think it really hit its groove around that point in. So don't skip the beginning or do. I don't know. Either way, listen to it. Just have fun with it. Try to enjoy it. It was good. It's really is a story about two guys who are like lifelong friends. It took us a while to kind of get to that part of the topic, but I think once we did, it definitely hit its stride. So that was good. So with that said, as always, please check out the show on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. You can find us on TikTok at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. The YouTube for the show is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. You can find the show directly in emails if you want to send us anything. If you want a business inquiry, if you want to buy the show or whatever else like that, definitely reach out at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. For all things Jeff Seltzer, you can always check us out at jeffseltzer.com. Everybodyhasastorypod.com will be a website we'll be using in some shape or fashion. If you want to be a guest on the show, please send us a DM on any of the socials I've just shared with you. Additionally, as a reminder, we are on all podcast platforms, video on YouTube and Spotify, audio everywhere that a podcast exists, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Pandora, and more recently Letterboxd, which really surprised me, but that's where we are. Last thing, we do have t-shirts for the show for sale, $20, has a front logo and a back logo. Send me a message if you're interested. If you're local, no shipping. If you're not local, it'll be exact shipping. We're not looking to make money off of shipping. With that said, have an amazing week. Thank you all for joining, and more fun next week. Take care, everybody.
Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody